They can be a great people, Kal-El, they wish to be. They only lack the light to show them the way. I'm John Renton with the Retro Review of Superman from 1978 with Christopher Reeve and Gene Hackman, Marlon Brando, Margot Kidder, Ned Beatty, Jackie Cooper, and the loaded cast to die for. A film that is nearly 50 years old and still holds up in so many ways. One of the finest superhero adaptations that has ever graced the silver screen. And, well, it was written by multiple people, but you had Richard Donner, who was on the ascent at this point. He would go on to do Superman 2, that would turn into Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, because the studio decided to fuck with him for some goddamn reason. But he'd also do The Goonies. The Goonies were enough in 1985. He also would go on to do the Lethal Weapon movies. They still want to do a fifth one. I don't know how or why they're going to do a fifth one, when by 1998, Gibson and Glover were getting too old for that shit. He also did Scrooge and Maverick. And he also did these films. Actually, he did The Omen just before he was given the opportunity to do Superman. Because, fun fact, well, essentially, Spielberg wanted a huge paycheck, and they balked at that and said, well, we're going to spend $55 million on this movie in 1978, but we're not going to pay you what you think you're worth. Oh, you did Jaws and it was wildly successful? Oh, you're doing Close Encounters of the Third Kind too late? Okay, let's get Richard Donner. Let's see what he can do. He had Gregory Peck and The Omen. Yeah, I'm going to hold these up, by the way, because these are actually two films from Richard Donner's filmography that more people need to watch. Lady Hawk, by the way, weird soundtrack. Will retro-review this at some point. Have retro-reviewed this. The whole point is, this is available on Max, and I'm preparing for the new Superman in just about a month. Actually, just bought my ticket. I'm locked in for the earliest show possible at the theater in town. I can't wait. It's going to be very interesting. But, yeah, all the Superman movies are available. At least the live-action ones will likely be retro-reviewed by me, or at least some of them. I may not get to every single one because even with a month, I still got a bunch of stuff going on, but I'll try to sprinkle them out throughout July. So, among the writers, there was Mario Puzo, who would do the Godfather 1 and 2 and other projects. You would have Robert Benton, who would do Kramer versus Kramer, Bonnie and Clyde. You would have Tom Mankiewicz, who would do Lady Hawk. He would also do the 70s Bond flicks. And it was kind of funny reading up on this on IMDb. The creators of the comic were super happy. They were super fucking thrilled with this. They were thrilled, just boosted, like their goddamn, enthusiasm was so fucking high. And you can see why. I will admit, right off the bat, there were problems with this movie, upon rewatching, and I will explain why in due course, because no superhero movie is absolutely perfect. There's always going to be certain problems, certain inconsistencies, but when you can capture the tone correct, at least for the most part, the flaws will just get pushed way the fuck down. Christopher Reeve was fucking phenomenal in this. This is where his career was basically cemented. He would go on to play Superman in the next 3 movies. The fourth one, fraught with problems. Good Lord. Good goddamn Lord. But yeah, a great goddamn cast. I mean, Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor when he was coming off the French Connection and various other projects. Mark McClure, you may remember him as Jimmy Olsen in this. Terrence Stamp as General Zod. A lot of really, really, big name actors and, some very, very, talented ones that were still on the ascent at this point. You have Phil Thaxter as Ma Kent. You had Glenn Ford as Pa Kent. And basically, if you're unfamiliar with the story of Superman, he is the last survivor of Krypton, at least in this incarnation. He is sent away and goes to live among the people on Earth. He goes to live in Smallville, Kansas. Gee, Smallville. I wonder if they'll ever make a television show about that and then have somebody in there that turns out to be part of some weird cult. I can't watch that show now because of that. And you know what I'm talking about if you've seen Smallville. Great theme by Remy Zero. Basically, he has super strength, he has super hearing, he has heat vision, x-ray vision, he can fly, he can save people, he can defy the laws of physics. There's a thing called kryptonite. It's a big old green glowing stone that is his one weakness. And then, basically, besides bad screenwriting, really, in the next movies. But He does have one other weakness as Lois Lane, played here by Margot Kidder, who did go through it quite a bit and unfortunately did pass away, sadly, at the age of 69. Don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. Nice. I'm sorry. Rest in peace, Margot Kidder. Rest in peace lots of people in this because the movie is pretty goddamn old at this point, 47 years old. Nevertheless, $55 million goddamn budget, $270 million today. And that was a hefty goddamn price tag in 1978. They had a hit on their hands, though. Even with a $7.4 million opening, that'd be $36.4 million today. It would go on to do $134.4 million US and Canada, which, okay, that's, I mean, it did like 2.5 times its budget. All right, even for back then, when tickets were certainly cheaper. That's something, $661.2 million, but just over $300 million worldwide. 1.47 billion. Billion with a B, folks. There you are. So, a few facts about this. Marlon Brando basically told Richard Donner, hey, let's just do the rehearsal footage and we'll just use whatever, because Brando, even by that point, is really fucking lazy. Christopher Reeve called him out on that. He got paid $3.7 million, which, by the way, would be $18.2 million in today's money for this and the sequel. Now, and the sequel was filmed, I think, very soon after this, if I remember right. Some say it's simultaneously. I mean, however it was done, it doesn't really matter. It is remarkable that they were able to lock in, you know, everybody for doing them back to back. But then again, Peter Jackson would go on to do that with the Lord of the Rings movies, and then they would do that with various other double part movies that were, you know, like Twilight and the last Harry Potter and whatnot. But Brando also agreed to a percentage of the gross. But then he backed out of the sequel, claiming he wasn't paid the percentage of the gross. I think that they wanted him to actually do something, you know, else other than what he wanted to do, i.e. put in effort. And he got upset. Brando, On the Waterfront, Streetcar Named Desire, Godfather 1 and 2 at this point. Other films, but those are like 4 right there. They're on the goddamn Mount Rushmore. And right there, he was cemented as one of the best actors. But he also had a tremendous goddamn ego that would expand almost as big as his waistline by the early 2000s. But, that, I mean, he's dead, so I don't really give a shit about talking about him. But, Brando didn't exactly, I don't think he was necessarily mean on set, like, because, you know, interview footage, it really depends on, like, you know, how people perceive him, but he wasn't exactly well received for his lack of effort. So Jerry Siegel and Joel Shuster? I was going to say Joel Silver, and that wasn't right. Joe Shuster. They were very, very over the goddamn moon about this, the creators. Reeves' performance received lavish praise. It was nice that Richard Donner got this because it's pretty much sent him on the ascent, and he had a hell of a career. He passed away a few years ago, I think. He's in his 90s. So, I like the Action Comics intro. John Williams' music adds so much to this. John Williams, he's still making music, and he's in his early to mid-90s. He's been making music for so fucking long. Spielberg flicks like this. And it would take an hour to talk about the influence of John Williams' music and just barely scratch the surface about how much his orchestral mastery means for this. You know, for this and other ones. I did like the dome in Krypton for just it was silly reasons and everything. And yes, okay, some of the sets are obviously miniatures. It was 78. They did what they could. Brando really did phone it in. There was General Zod, Ursa, talked about her perversions. I don't know who that actress was who played Ursa, but at the time, I would have. Nevertheless, there was also a guy named Beardo, as I'm calling. No, it actually, I don't know all the names of all the characters for a variety of reasons, because I don't fucking care. But, they then put these 3 people, including General Zod, in a 3D slide and sent them into goddamn space, which was hilarious to me. And they would show up in Superman 2, kneel before Zod. So, in the future, aluminum foil will be 20 times brighter in the sun. Good God, those suits are bright. Almost as bright as Brando's hair in this. He was Jor-El, by the way, Superman's dad, because Superman's named Kal-El. You should have listened to Jor-El, you dumb elders, because now Krypton's fucked. Krypton. I'm turning into JR here with Hangman. Well, he will go to Earth and we will stay here, is basically what he ends up saying to the elders. I mean, he doesn't say that he's going to send his son to Earth, but it's like, we're just all going to die on this planet. Like, why were they going to die? Is it because they found kryptonite? Is it because their rock-based economy was kind of on the fault? Har har. So he then basically gives him a long speech. As an infant, I cannot imagine that infant Kal-El would have retained much of this, but all these crystals and everything have all these pieces of information somehow, for whatever reason, by hook or crook or weird physics. But then he finishes off with, I bequeath you, my son. I know what he really said. Work with me here. He puts a piece of kryptonite in the goddamn thing because we have to have an excuse for Superman to have a problem in the third act. And then we go to, and then the plan starts to break up, and man, Tommy James is just upset because his crystal blue persuasion just absolutely getting destroyed. There are like 2 people watching this that will get that. And it's funny, actually, if you listen to it and you look up the lyrics, actually, it kind of matches what happens, like, with the planet and, you know, baby Kal-El floating through the goddamn, you know, vastness of space. I actually didn't realize that until I, like, was listening to the song while I paused the movie to write some notes. So, anyway, Brando also put an audio file, his own audio file on the ship so he could talk to him and everything. And then while you know, Pa and Ma Kent were driving in the Annabelle Creation supply truck, they end up seeing the, you know, the giant crystal ball, crystal blue persuasion ball fly down, and they take him as their own. They see his instant super strength. Kid looked like he was wearing a helmet instead of hair. I did notice that. And then we go to teenage Kal-El, where he's talking to a cheerleader named Lana Lake. Get it? You get it? You get it? Because they referenced it was in Smallville that they did that. You get it? Why were they supposed to be teenagers in Smallville, by the way, or young adults when that show lasted for about 10 seasons? I think 10 seasons. So, his dad basically tells him he's there for a reason, this kind of stuff, but his dad had a weak heart. His dad died in the field, and all his power, and he couldn't save him. And then he tells Ma he has to leave, despite the fact that it looked like Ma can't age like about 80 years in about 2. But he finds a ship in the barn. He says he has to leave. And he goes up into the mountains, gets the, we get the Fortress of Solitude thing. They really start to move this kind of quickly. I forgot that like a third of this fucking thing is like the origin story. And they slam a lot of this stuff in there. But then he sees his dad in 3D. You won't remember me, son. And I'm phoning this son of a bitch in. Here's your origin. I'm going to show you the vastness of space 2001 style. Wait, there's a baby floating. Get the hell out of here. So anyway, study these crystals and they can be, you know, a great people Kal-El they wish to be. They only lack light to show them the way. Or lack the light, whatever. So we slam right into him having the costume, like instantly, out of the baby blanket thing that he had. So 48 minutes in, he has the costume, and that's it. Pacing became a bit of an issue for the last 2 acts of this. I did note, as great as this movie is, and I can rewatch this every few years, or maybe every year, but it's just, I will get to my biggest criticism of this in just a moment. So, the Daily Planet, Metropolis, obviously fucking New York. Nothing against New York, but it's obvious it's New York. Who remembers newspapers? If you don't remember newspapers, you're probably too young to be watching this video. So, Reeve was great as nerdy Clark Kent and, you know, all that. I did laugh at, like, the part where, you know, they're in the alleyway after he's like, oh, Lois, you know, you should do what this criminal says. And then the criminal tries to shoot him, but of course he catches the bullet just easily. It doesn't hurt himself, but knocks himself out. And that was a funny moment. And now we get to my biggest criticism of this whole goddamn movie, Gene Hackman. And that's going to sound funny for you guys. Gene Hackman is a legendary actor. Gene Hackman, passing away the way he did, especially his wife and one of the dogs, absolutely horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. Gene Hackman is a great actor. Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor was not great, and I will explain why. I felt while trying to capture the fun of this whole thing, and they didn't have to take it so seriously, something about the way he played Lex did not gel with the rest of this. And you had Ned Beatty as Otis the town drunk. I mean, Otis the henchman. You had Miss Tessmacher, that might as well have been called Miss Breastmacher for the fact that they were just pushed up. They would have given, if she had ran, she would have given herself and people in, like, you know, on the set, like 2 black eyes right there. I think she's still alive, so I really feel bad about that, but her, Valerie something. I don't remember the last name exactly. It was something that would have been hard to pronounce. But that's really my only issue with this movie, overall. Gene Hackman, as great as he is, and he has some good lines, feels very lacking as a villain. Like, the other incarnations of Lex Luthor would do better, animated and otherwise. Maybe not Kevin Spacey in Superman Returns. I think it was Kevin Spacey. I have not watched Superman Returns in a while, for a variety of reasons. Mainly the fact it was shit. Man of Steel had some great moments. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Nicholas Hoult, I believe, will do as Lex Luthor in the new Superman, which thankfully is just going to pick things up without actually doing the origin. If you don't know the fucking origin by now, don't know what to tell you. So, Clark then just randomly starts saving people because people in Metropolis are fucking idiots. One guy in a helicopter, in the news helicopter, gets the copter caught on a wire. Lois almost falls. He changes into a revolving door thing. That was hilarious. And saves Lois. And then he's just stopping all crime. He stops a jewel thief from climbing up this deal. And, you know, this man has something to confess. And Air Force One is going down. God, if only that would happen now. Jeez, this country would be a whole bunch better off. Take the family with them. I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? I don't care. Because guess what? It's a joke. Or is it? So anyway, boom. Luthor decides he's going to take Superman out because he's living underground. In a very, very nice, lavish place. That I don't believe for a fucking second is actually underground, but I digress. Jackie Cooper yelling at everybody as Perry White. It was great. Jackie Cooper is a great actor. Died sometime after this movie. There's no way he's still alive. It looked like he was 80 here. But he wants to get an interview. He wants somebody to get the interview with Superman. Find out more about him and everything. Naturally, because Clark likes Lois. Clark, obviously being Superman, gives Lois the interview. And it takes her flying and everything. After saying, I'm here to fight for truth, justice, and the American way. He lets Lois feel the cold vastness of, you know, impending doom as he starts to let her drop it and picks her up. Because every woman should feel as safe as possible with a caped superhero like that. So, goes on a date. Clark and her go on a date. This is after, obviously, she's with Superman. How nobody ever figured out that Clark was Superman. I mean, like, just the glasses. I mean, great role by Reeve. I'm just saying, I don't understand how fucking people didn't know. Hackman and his goons, again, it's inconsistent with the gelling of the tone. And he found the kryptonite while breaking into a museum. Or his goons broke into a museum. He decides to basically come up with a way to, cause destruction on the San Andreas Fault. He wrecks a car, because I guess that chasing the French Connection just rattled his brain. He just has been trying to recapture that magic ever since. How many costume changes did the villains need in this? Evidently a lot. Margot Kidder, Margot Kidder's, meanwhile, is interviewing a guy about selling a plot of land. An Indian guy selling a plot of land to, like, Lex Luthor for a shit pot full of money, evidently. Luthor tells Superman, hey, I've got missiles aimed at various places and you can't save them all. Oh, and I've also got gas, a gas I'm going to release. Just to get him to his sewer lair, where he puts the kryptonite on him after explaining all this stuff about trying to get a bunch of land and destroy the West Coast, but make it a rental property, Lex Luthor Incorporated. Because why not? See, none of this really gels as well as I think they planned. Because again, Hackman, as great as he is. Richard Dreyfuss might have been an interesting one. Paul Newman, even though Paul Newman was a bit older. It would have been interesting to see Jack Nicholson play him. Because at this point, people didn't know that Jack Nicholson was so goddamn insane. I think Nicholson might have been better. I mean, he did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and stuff like that. He hadn't done The Shining yet, and Batman was still 11 years off. But essentially, he hangs the kryptonite after Superman opens the chest and everything, the lead-lined chest, because he can't see through lead. He sees the kryptonite, and it's hung around him like a necktie, like a long red necktie, and throws him in the goddamn little pool that he happens to just have in this underground fortress area. And then Miss Tessmacher ends up saving him. She says, on the condition that you save my mother first. We never actually see him save the mother. We just see him save people. But I'm just going to assume Miss Tessmacher's mother was saved. See, because we just kind of bounce all over the place. It sounds like I'm really down on the movie, and I'm actually not. But it just, again, it just feels like the Gene Hackman parts just don't quite gel as much. Now, I'm open to receiving criticism in the comments. But he ends up sending a missile up into the sky to basically blow up, so he stops all that. An earthquake, an explosion at the gas station that just is like out in the middle of nowhere, so deliveries must be hell to get to, or to get them sent out there. And in his efforts to save the dam and do all this stuff, Margot Kidder ends up getting buried in a broken fault line and killed. He's pissed off. He has rescued Jimmy Olsen at this point, by the way, from the dam breaking down, because Jimmy Olsen, for some reason, thought that as an earthquake was happening, standing on top of a fucking dam was a good idea. And he ends up being pissed off that he couldn't save Lois. It reminds him of his dad. His Pa Kent, but Jor-El basically instilled in him, you can't interfere with human history. Well, he does. He turns the planet backwards, and even though he saved everybody, he manages to stop Lois from getting into the fault line, and she's okay. And then he just suddenly gets Lex and Otis and throws them in there, in jail, and that's it. And then he flies off to cut to credits. It's kind of convenient, kind of a bit of a... I mean, I'm not saying he shouldn't use his powers for whatever reason. I mean, and you would do that if you love somebody, even if it was Margot Kidder. Nothing against Margot Kidder, but, I mean, she was no Linda Carter. That being said, there are flaws in this. I'm not going to say it's like the absolute picture-perfect movie, but as a superhero movie, I think it, like 90% whatever, captured the tone properly. It's just Gene Hackman. There's something about Gene Hackman's performance always bothered me. Just whatever. It is what it is. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too judgmental, but we will see how the next Superman plays out. So I may get to a couple of the other ones in this month. If I don't get to all of them, I do apologize. Agree, disagree, what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Ritland. Until we meet again, happy trails to you.